What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast, formerly known as the Let's Talk podcast. We have rebranded to a new name called the PawCast, and I'm here with Mason, Collier, and Sarah. And to get us started with an easy question, or easy topic, we're going to be talking about fan agency and rivalries between sports teams. And to get us started with the question, do you guys think new age rivalries are better, ones after 2000, or old age ones are better, like before 2000?
Um, I would say that older age rivalries are a lot more like powerful as in so let's say for instance, a big recent rivalry in basketball would be the Warriors and the Cavaliers, considering how many back-to-back finals they went together. It's like infamously known within our generation, the generation of our age. But when you take a rivalry like, let's say, the Lakers and the Celtics, that has been a rivalry forever. So when it comes to the Cavs and the Warriors, there's a lot of people who recognize that as a rivalry, and a lot of people know about it. But that is from a certain age group and below consider that a rivalry. But when you look at the Lakers and the Celtics, everyone almost who watches basketball in general considers that a rivalry. So I think the older and like more historical significance a rivalry holds, the more invested people are, and the more amount of people that are invested in that rivalry exists.
Yeah, I agree, honestly. I also like you could make points for both cases. I mean, like when I think of like old rivalries, I like think like probably like Green Bay or Minnesota or like what's another good one? Like Dallas or the Eagles. But like sometimes like to have a rivalry you have to have important moments like with Green Bay and Minnesota, like you have like Randy Moss like mooning the crowd, or like the Lambeau Leap or something like that, or like Eagles fans literally like beating up like Cowboys fans in the stands, or just like stuff like that. Like you like it having history like invests people into their team more.
Yeah, I have to agree with the history making things more like important to the fans. Sir, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts, I would say more historical, or definitely more prominent in my opinion, because one of the biggest examples that I can think of is Clemson and NC State. As you know, in history, North Carolina and South Carolina were kind of in a competitive war for textiles, and they had like this heated debate with one another, and it brought about a lot of controversy and everything. So to this day, there's still a lot of issues with that, and it doesn't sit well with Clemson fans. So in their heart, they want to like beat out North Carolina. They just hate it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one's actually more interesting because there's a trophy involved in that one that gets exchanged between teams, which makes it more impressive after you win. Which, all right, sorry, I'm just remembering a old joke I heard about that rivalry. We had, in the locker room, we had one of the players. I think it was KJ, who he's actually on the Eagles now. And during the game, it's like in our dog pile. He just swipes like some of their towels, and it's become like a new tradition. I think like they started like 5 years ago. After the game, they'll tally up how many towels he can get from the other team, and I think NC State does the same thing. I think last year we won with like 5-3, which is it's pretty sick.
Yeah. A big thing about that, like, there's a lot of implications that come with rivalries, and like in that scenario, that's more of like a messing around type of deal. But for like a lot of rivalries, it gets to a point where you're kind of going over the edge in some sort. For example, let's take like the Pistons and the Bulls during the Pistons like bad boy um like timeline, and they literally had a rule, like it was called Jordan rules, And that was essentially every time that Michael Jordan got the ball, that it was like you were completely as physical as possible against him and like deliberately trying to hurt him. And so there's a lot of you know, violence and like even illegal things. Let's look at Auburn and Alabama. Obviously, that's a huge one. Um, Back when they had the historic oak tree at Auburn, you know, there's an Alabama fan who came through and poisoned the grounds that it lived on and killed one of the most historic things for Auburn and their fan base. And so, although rivalries can create like a lot of attention and make sports more intriguing, there's a kind of a fine line that people like to cross a lot of the time. They think they're being funny, but they, you know, they take things a little bit too far and ruin the fun for everyone.
I agree with that. Another rivalry that I personally really think is a big one, it's in the NFL, is the Baltimore Ravens and the Pittsburgh Steelers. That one runs pretty deep. For me, it's a problem because I'm a Pittsburgh fan. So, we wave our terrible towels or whatever. But there's definitely a lot of bad blood with the Ravens and the Steelers. Every time there's a game, like it's going to be a big controversy. Same thing goes for the Clemson Tigers and the Gamecocks. I mean, every time it's hate week, I mean, we're either burning a Gamecock, they're burning a Tiger, or we're sitting there and we're looking at an old picture of a player stomping on another player
Hmm.
aggressively in a very violent fashion. And
Yeah.
downtown are always flooded. There's always people causing a scene, lots of fights, lots of quarrels. Like that's just the way rivalries, honest, I can't even pronounce rivalries. That's kind of the way that it just kind of pans out, like there's a lot of hatred on both sides. And going back to earlier's example, I laughed a little bit because a little bit of nervous. But again, like history does, play a big factor in it at the end of the day. I mean, people look at history and they kind of want to like, in a way, honor history. So, they're gonna share a little bit of the hatred.
Yeah, I mean, I think history is like, I mean, it makes rivalries a thing. I mean, there has to be some, you know, discourse or something that happens in order to have a real rivalry. As in, I mean, a lot of like newer teams or anyone in the marketing world, they try to make artificial rivalries. And a lot of times it's not very effective. But you can look at um, rivalries like currently. Let's talk about what we just talked about earlier in class. The Four Nations. Um, it's a rivalry beyond history, but this time that they played, it was a lot more important considering the way that politics are working in the world right now. And you could kind of say the same thing when the U.S. soccer is playing Mexico or U.S. soccer is playing Canada. Those things are still, you know, kind of in the back of our mind when they're playing. So there's more to a rivalry than just the game. It's more implications um, beyond the sport. Like, let's say, obviously, there's the border crisis going on between Mexico and America, and there's not a lot of good faith going on between the two nations currently. And so every time they play in the last couple of years, you know, the stakes have been higher. More people have tuned in, and there's a lot more to go on behind the scenes than just the game at hand. And that's why rivalries are so important. And that's why they're commonly one of the most watched games because there's people are invested beyond the sport itself. They're invested because they believe in a certain type of thing. America wants to win because they think Mexico isn't doing enough, and Mexico wants to win because they think America is, you know, being prejudiced against them. So there's a lot more that goes that meets the eye with rivalries, and that's why you know they're so easy to get invested into.
Yeah, I think country rivalries are like interesting because I love it when the U.S. plays like the UK in soccer because it'll be like the 1 week where I actually care about soccer. Like I'll learn the rules and like everything, and I think it's like so funny. And there's people like the picture of like the one guy who like pulled his shirt up after he scored. Like it's called soccer. I think this just says like a lot about how that's more of an American like pride thing, really, just wanting to be like the best over everyone. And I think that's historic, but I mean it's been getting like worse recently. And I think another thing about new age rivalries are like it's becoming less team based and more like personal. Because I think of people
Hmm.
like Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Because like, and like I guess 80s, 90s, like yeah, players like hated each other, but it would only be like on the court. Nowadays, you can be like on Twitter, like off the court, like 24/7. They can be like beefing even when they're not playing each other. Like it'll
Hmm.
be like a post game interview, and they'll just like be like Caitlin Clark talking. Angel Reese will like tweet something that's like disagreeing with her, and I think that's like a new modern thing that old age rivalries really like I say can't compete with because there's
Hmm.
not as like connected as we are today.
Yeah, going on the Caitlin Clark topic, like she herself, because she's become such like a martyr for the WNBA community. She almost has a rivalry with a lot of the let's say older age people in the WNBA, because a lot of those women, like, they've put in the work, they've been playing amazing basketball their whole life, and they feel like, hey, this girl just can't come along and take all the credit. Like, I've been here this whole time. And so a lot of times if you watch WNBA games and you watch coverage about them and like kind of what goes around Caitlin Clark, a lot of the older generation of players will discredit her, or some current players who are of the older generation will be more physical with her and give her a little shoulder bump or something. And so these narratives, they're none of these are artificially made. They're created through some type of um like storyline that happened to make one or the other upset. I mean, you could say the same thing about Clemson, South Carolina, how Clemson marched onto USC's campus and then they dominated for the first few games that we ever played them. And so there's history to it, and like that's why, as I said before, historical rivalries are pretty unbeaten. The second closest thing is like current rivalries that have true narratives, and then rivalries that are artificial are almost obsolete. No one can really get behind it. I mean, you can try as much as you want to market a rivalry, but in actuality, no one can get invested if there's nothing at stake for them personally.
Right. No one likes a one-sided rivalry. No one wants a Pats Patriots. Like it's hard to market that kind of stuff because like you see Amazon Prime like advertising like I don't know like Denver and the Chiefs, and it's like yeah, this rivalry was like insane in like the like late 90s and early 2000s, but like no one gives like a damn about like the Broncos anymore. Like let's
Yeah,
be real here. Like it's just it's hard to market historical rivalries if the rivalry has been one-sided for so long.
yeah,
For
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
I mean, I totally agree. I mean, that's something I didn't bring up when I was talking about historical or rivalries, but I mean, that's definitely something to look at. Like, if you want a true rivalry, like, there has to be some success on both sides. If not, then it's just a domination on one side, and the fan base eventually gives up on the rivalry because there's no rival. Like, it's just more like they go and participate and lose and leave. It's not something they're invested in because they never believe they have a chance.
Yeah, like a perfect example I like to think of is like Vanderbilt, Tennessee. Like Vanderbilt doesn't never really been a powerhouse in football or never really been
Hmm.
good at football. But like they're supposed to have a rivalry with Tennessee because they're both in state, but like it's never been like
Yeah.
it's never been like contestant with each other. They're all like it's always one-sided. Tennessee usually is the one that kicks Vanderbilt's ass.
Hmm. I
Another
totally agree.
rivalry that I can think of is West Point and Navy. I think the reason why they're competing against each other is because, even though they're like two different fields in the military, essentially, you know, the schools are very prideful about wanting to win. So that's been like a long, heated battle for a minute. And usually, like, Navy does beat West Point, but West Point did have a hell of a year last year, if y'all were following with that.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm gonna bounce off what you said, Mason, um, about like having success as a rivalry. Like, in order to have a historical rivalry dwindle out, it has to be like a long, long time of domination. Like, I mean, you could say for Clemson, like we've dominated other than, you know, up until 2020, we were dominating USC for a long, long amount of time
Mhm.
there. And uh, like to say that USC fans were no longer considering it a rivalry would be kind of crazy because everyone knows what happens when USC fans show up in Clemson. Because I mean, I remember growing up and having my friends who were USC fans saying like the fear of the thumb because they had 5 wins in a row, and the thumb would be the sixth one. Um, but like those 5 year spans and context of like a long historical time is essentially nothing. So it has to be like a long, long spurt of like, sorry, but you've been losing forever. Even bringing up the movie we watched. Oh, sorry, different class. Um, uh, but yeah, you have to have like a long spurt of um, no success for a rivalry to truly dwindle out.
Mhm.
I would agree with that.
What do you think, Caleb?
Yeah, I think it's a lot more fun if it's a competitive rivalry because I think those are the best kind more than like historical. Because like I'll see, or I guess I used to get hyped more about like Clemson FSU than I did about Clemson Carolina. Because that would be like a you haven't been dominating this team for years. Like sure you've been like
Hmm.
winning, but it hasn't been like belt to ass like every game like
Yeah,
it was for like years with Carolina.
Mhm.
that's fair.
And I think at that point like the fans get like even more engaged because then it's like you get to cheer for something instead of just like walking in knowing like the result's gonna like happen at like in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's for sure. And like the
Yeah.
thing that I find funny about rivalries is that like it's not just, let's say, it's not just the fan base that buys in, or it's not just the players. It's the players and the fan base. Like for example, um, like in 1989, fans threw snowballs and batteries at Cowboys coach Jimmy Johnson, and so that's a Philadelphia Eagles fans going up against a member of the team. So they hate these people so much that they are going to physically harm the head coach. So it's not like fan against fan. And it's not, coach against coach or player against player. It's fan to coach, which is, obviously, as I said before, there's a lot of lines that, are often crossed with rivalries, but it's kind of interesting to see that like how everyone can buy in and how these fans feel some personal vendetta against the coach of another team who's just trying to make a living and make his football team better.
Yeah, I agree with that, Collier.
I don't think it's right to sit there and basically put down a football coach just because you're mad about past history, because there's a fight between the two teams and you just want to pin it all on the coach. That's just not fair. Like it's not fair to pin that on anybody. I think that's kind of inhumane in a sense. I mean, I know people love rivalries, like it gets people like hyped and everything, like it's something to watch. Hot take, but I think rivalries lead to a lot of drama.
Well, I think I have to agree with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's like
The
the
appeal.
appeal. Yeah, it's the appeal. I mean, as much as I hate to admit it, humans love drama, and with rivalry comes every single bit of drama you could ask for. And
Yeah,
so,
we
like you, as soon as you make it personal, um, I mean, people just love to, buy into it. It gives them something to care about more than they should. And humans love to distract themselves on sports. And if you give them something big to distract them about, they'll pay attention. That's why I mean rivalries are successful and they'll always be the most important thing in sports. That and championships. It's rivalries and championships. I mean, think about you know, Michigan versus Ohio State this year. Ohio State lost
Mhm.
to Michigan, and Michigan's fans were happy. They were happier that they beat Ohio State than upset that Ohio State won the national championship. Because in their mind, they won their season. They had a crappy season, but they beat Ohio State. That's their championship. And obviously, Ohio State's fans are not going to hear the end of it. They can say that they won the national championship as much as they want, but you say that to a Michigan fan, it says it doesn't matter. We beat you. That's the only thing that matters.
Right. Honestly, I remember last season, Carolina, they beat
Mm-hmm.
LSU. That was shocking. Everybody was like mouth wide open, like stunned to speak. But that's what I'm saying is like, even if, off your point, Collier, even if they don't win big, if they win one really crazy game that shocks people, then in their head they won and now they're up there, which is why when we have Clemson or we have any other big school that plays a team that's smaller and doesn't do as hot, then that's when people get upset, but they don't look at the bigger picture of, well, what's the trajectory? Like, how many wins has this team actually gotten? Like, one win is just a bad day. But with rivalries, it's like, I cannot pronounce that word, guys, to save my life today. It's just like, it causes a lot of drama. It causes a lot of skewed data and a lot of a misconception between like, the value of the team and, what the team stands for. And
For
people like
sure.
to take to the streets and light things on fire. They like to have brawls in the bar. I mean, it just gets intense. A lot
Yep.
of trash on the ground.
Yeah,
For sure.
I think I have to agree with Collier said about the who won last argument. It's like an insane thing in rivalries because like I have like friends that'll go to Carolina and I'll like post like I have a friend that like stutter during a sentence and I'll just like make a little joke about it and he'll just say who won last and like talking about like football, which I mean they did win last, so I think he has me there.
Yeah.
But since we seem to be running out of time, I think that's a good point to end it on. So,
Yeah.
as thanks to the listeners for tuning in on this new episode of the PawCast. I'll see you later.
See ya.
Okay.